All right, welcome back into the Yappin' Football podcast. As always, Dylan Mehl, joined by my guy Javon from Stats Over Feelings. We are back for another podcast episode here. Week 3 of the NFL season is in the books. Javon's Pittsburgh Steelers move to 3-0. My Eagles bounce back and get a win. So, personally, we're both riding pretty high off of a week 3, but there was a lot that happened, a lot to get into. Teams are really starting to, I think, show their true colors, some in a good way, some in a bad way. But you would text me about this during the Sunday Night Football game, and I thought it was really interesting and a good talking point. The system quarterback, and I don't want this to be perceived in a negative way or a negative light about any of these quarterbacks that we're about to mention, because they're really playing well. None of them have lost a game, but yet they're not guys that we would refer to as the most talented guys. But Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, and Malik Willis are combined 8-0 this season. And I think it really speaks to just some teams have figured out how to build a good roster regardless of the quarterback position. And it's not about an offensive head coach like Malik Willis and Sam Darnold have, or a defensive coach like Justin Fields has. It's just simply about putting your quarterback in a position to succeed, play to their strengths and not their weaknesses. And we have really seen that to open up the season with Darnold, Fields, and in the last 2 weeks, Malik Willis.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true, man. And it just comes down to the fact that you want to win the games, man. It doesn't matter if you want to look flashy or I'm so focused on developing this player into being Patrick Mahomes. That's what I think everyone's trying to do. They're trying to develop their quarterback to be the next superstar. When you need to just focus on winning the game that's in front of you right now. And that's what the Packers and the Steelers and the Vikings have been doing. So honestly, that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think a major point of that is not asking your quarterback to do more than their skill set allows. Yeah. And that's different for each team. For, the Packers and the Steelers, use the legs of Malik Willis and Justin Fields to your advantage. Let them make plays there, but don't ask them to make throws that they're not really comfortable making. For Sam Darnold, draw plays that kind of limit some of his previous turnover worthy woes. When he was on the Jets, he was really willing to force things. Kevin O'Connell makes the offensive system great for him. Obviously it helps to have guys like Justin Jefferson on the team. There's no doubt about that. And I would say all 3 of those teams have one thing in common, and that is a good, strong defense behind the quarterback that doesn't make them feel like they need to play hero ball. We know what Pittsburgh has. Brian Flores has the Vikings, potentially, you could say, as the best defense in the NFC through 3 weeks for sure. The Green Bay Packers, ever since the Brazil game versus the Eagles, they've looked really, really dominant as a defense. And it just goes to show that you don't need to have the top 5 quarterback in the NFL to be successful.
Oh, yeah, man. You look at most of the top teams right now, or the top quarterbacks, rather. You can look at the top quarterbacks, look at their records. Besides the Chiefs, man, there's the Ravens. They didn't look that hot. They didn't start off
on the Ravens, the Bengals with Joe Burrow. Josh Allen and the Bills have been pretty good. Got to give credit where it's due there. But whether it's Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, obviously he's on the Eagles and they're 2-1, but Jalen hasn't looked great. The quarterback play this year has been very, very wonky, obviously, aside from the consistency that is Patrick Mahomes, but even he hasn't had this big highlight game. But with that, I do want to move into talking about 2 3-0 teams, the Minnesota Vikings and the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've looked, if I just watched this season in a vacuum, I think you could certainly make a case that these are the 2 best teams in the league right now. I'll let you talk about your Steelers, man. What do you think's been the key to success for them early on this year?
Man, I do think the Steelers have the best defense in the NFL right now. Patrick Queen, man, he dropped the interception today, but that defense, I get it. We're not playing the most explosive offense in the NFL, but J.K. Dobbins has been averaging 130 yards a game the first 2 games. Got basically shut down today, didn't even crack 60 yards. Yep. Justin Herbert did get hurt, I believe, in the 4th quarter. But we were already winning by that point. I think we're winning by a possession or 2. Justin Fields was he's been making throws after throws after throws. they just always get called back.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, man. I feel like we have the most called back plays that are like 20 plus yards.
George Pickens would be leading the NFL in receiving yards if it wasn't for penalties.
He gets like three passes called back a game, like 60 yards easily. But that honestly it's got to be that defense, man. I don't think anyone was expecting the Steelers or the Vikings defense to be as good as it is right now, especially for the Vikings, though.
Well, so I'm not going to full on victory lap it because I didn't, come on here and definitively say that the Steelers were going to have a top 5, top 3, top 1 defense. I didn't call my shot like that, but I was somebody who really hammered the drum of Patrick Queen as a free agent. It started when he was a free agent. I desperately wanted the Eagles to sign him. He ends up going to Pittsburgh, and I immediately said, Pittsburgh's defense is scary now because they have an elite player at all 3 levels. TJ Watt on that line, Patrick Queen at the linebacker, and Minkah Fitzpatrick in that secondary. And I didn't hear a lot of other people saying it, so I'm going to take the victory lap in small portion there because I came up here and I have been a big supporter of Patrick Queen. And not only do I think that he really completes and brings together that Steelers defense, but when you look at the other side for Baltimore, they're clearly missing Patrick Queen. So his impact is really being shown on 2 teams. I think Pittsburgh's pass rush is one of the best in football. The Chargers tackles through 2 games had allowed 3 total pressures. And today, Pittsburgh was continually getting home. Yes, Justin Herbert was hurt. It wasn't quite as mobile, but that Steelers defensive line was just menacing. TJ Watt, we've said this multiple times on the show, he is the best defensive player in football. Maybe you don't win the award every year. It's like LeBron with MVPs in his prime. You don't win every MVP, but we all know who the best is. And that's TJ Watt when it comes to defensive player in football. Justin Fields is making plays when he needs them. His scrambling ability is there. I think George Pickens took a step forward as a wide receiver. Truthfully, the stats haven't fully shown that yet, but this is a guy who last week on Pat Surtain should have had 6 for 120 and a touchdown. And Pat Surtain is one of the best lockdown corners in the NFL, man. The rush game is there. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Cordero Patterson had a mean run today for Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. Big time. So we needed that.
The pieces are coming together, and you said something to me, and I don't remember if this was on recording or not on recording, but how many times do people need to see the same thing to believe it? With the Pittsburgh Steelers being a good team. Everybody who had written them off said that they were going to be the worst team in this AFC North, and it was like, guys, I understand on paper the team doesn't look the best. They look better than they did last year, and they won 10 games. This is going to be a good football team because of Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, facts, man. And before the game we just played today, our second leading wide receiver, Van Jefferson, 15 yards through 2 games. That was our second leading wide receiver going into this game, and we were still 2-0, man. But honestly, I didn't have that many doubts about the Steelers' defense, as like the talent has always been there. My big question mark was how much they're going to be on the field. That's why I didn't know where we were going to like rank amongst all the other defenses in the NFL. I'm like, I didn't know how good this offense was going to be. You look at the paper and you see Van Jefferson, you see Scotty Miller, and you're like, man.
Calvin Austin.
And it's like Calvin Austin. It was like, man, I don't know how much this defense is going to be on the field. So that's what I was really worried about. I was never really questioning the talent. It was like, man, maybe the talent is not going to match the stats or the yardage that we give up or whatever. But yeah, the Vikings is the same way, man. I don't think no one expected the Vikings defense to be as good as it's been, honestly.
Yeah. Before we talk about the Vikings, I got a bold prediction here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. My bold prediction is that Russell Wilson's calf injury is not healed by week 4. That's my bold prediction. Is he's still hurt next week. Because that Justin Fields isn't turning that ball back over to anybody at this point in time. He haven't lost a game.
1 turnover through 3 games, man. And honestly, I don't want him to force his way back either, just because he feels the pressure. Honestly, if Justin Fields wins next week, man, I think the job is his to lose, man. I don't think that job is getting lost under any circumstance. He'll have to have a seriously bad turnover streak to give up that job.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And the Minnesota Vikings, man, their defense has been top notch, and we could talk about that in a second because I think Brian Flores has done a phenomenal job there. But I want to talk about Sam Darnold because this is a guy who, very similar to Geno Smith a couple of years ago, a lot of people had written off Sam Darnold, and this year he is 10th in the NFL in passing yards with 657, 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. And I want to just point something out to people listening. I saw it on Twitter. If you saw this, you won't be surprised. But if you didn't see this, I think it's going to shock her. Sam Darnold right now is younger than Joe Burrow. Younger than Joe Burrow. And
That's
Joe
insane.
Burrow is a guy that we look at with a lot of runway left, a long career. Sam Darnold was a top 3 pick in the draft previously. He landed on the Jets, not a good spot. He got to Shanahan last year, showed that he had some left in him, and now another good offensive mind in Kevin O'Connell. And it's like, hold on. This is starting to look like the Sam Darnold that was drafted top 3 overall. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but this is starting to look like the guy that there is first-round draft capital invested in because Kevin O'Connell, a good offensive mind, you bring him into that system and you start to limit some of the negative things that he had. Did Sam Darnold have a little bit of wildness to throwing the football? Certainly, sometimes to time. But the physical tools, the size, the ability to extend plays, that is what Kevin O'Connell is getting the best out of Sam Darnold right now. You have the good weapons in Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison should be back fairly soon. Aaron Jones looked good today. The Vikings, man, that offense combined with a Brian Flores defense that has been absolutely mean in back-to-back weeks, stifling the San Francisco 49ers and the Houston Texans, who many, I believe, would argue are 2 of the top 10 offensive rosters on paper, maybe even top 5. This is a complete Vikings team, and they're a real threat in the NFC.
Oh, a real threat? Is that what you think?
I think they're a real threat in the regular season. I need to see more from Darnold throughout a full season to believe he can consistently go out there and win tough games and win a playoff game. But back-to-back weeks beating the 49ers and the Texans, it's hard to not say that they're a real team.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, man. And you can see the experience when Sam Darnold plays, man. You can tell that he's made – everyone knows he hasn't had the greatest start to his career. I mean, you look up his career stats before this season, and they're god-awful. You wonder how he got another shot in the NFL. But honestly, going into the NFL draft, this past NFL draft, everyone was saying that the Vikings were the ideal place for any rookie quarterback to go to regardless. You know, so it doesn't surprise anyone that a former first-round pick can just step in and start balling. I mean, no one expected him to beat the 2 teams that you just said, the Texans and the 49ers. But I mean, he's been looking impressive, man, and it just shows what having a complete team, a good system, and a non-toxic organization that actually knows how to, you know, build something. Because Kirk Cousins has won what 12, 13 games with this. With a similar Vikings team before, just a couple years ago. So this team already knows how to win. This organization, there's players in this organization that know how to win already. So I'm just glad that he could step in and deliver.
Yeah, and, you know, we don't want to overreact here to even just 3 weeks, but we're getting to the point in the season where usually typically by a month in, by September, October, teams have kind of shown you who they are. And while we saw some regression from some other 2-0 teams in the week in New Orleans and Tampa Bay, Minnesota stayed pretty much who they were today against the Texans defense that just made the Bears and Caleb Williams look silly on Sunday night. That offense still looked really good against the Houston Texans, and they're players in that NFC North, man. Detroit kind of looks like they may have taken a step back from last year, if we're being completely honest. Green Bay, we'll see. They've been winning games right now with Malik Willis. Jordan Love looks like he'll be back sooner than later, but there's some things that they got to work out there. And that offensive line in Chicago is not good enough for them to win.
He's a USC again, man.
Listen, there's a reason they had a top 10 draft pick on their own. So I think Minnesota's in a really, really good spot here. 2 teams at 3-0 that I don't think many people had starting 3-0 on their bingo card. Pittsburgh really needs it, though, with that tough end of the schedule. Minnesota, a surprise out the woodworks. two teams that many expected to be very good are the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles. They both held on to win nail-biting games today. I'll start with my Eagles. I forget, what was this, 15-12, the final score? Yeah, a really
like
odd
that.
final score.
Yeah.
And we had texted about this, and I'm fine having the back and forth here. You told me that you thought the Eagles were in trouble. And I think that there are certain characteristics of this team that could continue to get them into trouble. But when I look at the overall landscape of the NFL, nobody wants to have problems. But there seems to me, at least, to be clear solutions to the Eagles' problems. And it's not a talent-related issue. It's not something that you can't fix. This is pure coaching and just IQ-related issues where you can just be smarter.
But we've seen coaching derail entire teams, man.
For sure.
So,
for sure. The team has been sloppy to open up the year. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But they're one drive away from being 3-0 despite being sloppy. The talent on this team is here. A.J. Brown has missed 2 of the 3 games now. Devonta Smith missed a huge portion of this game. The Saquon Barkley addition has been huge, ginormous. You can't overstate it to open up the season.
100%.
He has put the team on his back. And in this game, I don't know if every team's fan base is like this, but Eagles fans, I kind of have to talk them off the edge of a cliff time to time, my friends, it seems like, because they are willing. I had a friend text me today saying that the Eagles should draft a quarterback in this coming draft.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you're out of your mind. And I had another friend say, if Jalen Hurts is as good as you say he is, they'll get points on this last drive. And then the Eagles score on that last drive, and this guy's texting me going, thank God we got Saquon. And I'm like, no. I need the praise for number one to be as loud as the criticism was before that drive started, because you were willing to just sell the farm on this guy 5 seconds ago. But, the Eagles come out there, they get the win. It's kind of an inverse of what we had seen the first 2 weeks. The defense steps up in a massive, massive way. Yeah. The injury to Eric McCoy just threw this game off the rails for the Saints because they're going to a backup guarding Jalen Carter. And listen, Jalen Carter showed today why he was a top 10 pick in the draft. This guy was an absolute game wrecker, an absolute menace all day. Not all the counting stats will show it, but if you watch this game, you know what I mean. He was breaking through, tearing up every single play. It was a very good day for the defense. The secondary played pretty well. Quinyon Mitchell had a really nice recovery on a Rashid Shaheed go route. Overall, if you look at this game statistically, with everything but the final score, and I showed you that, you would think Philly won 28-12. Instead, they won a 15-12. A win is a win. We could talk about the coaching. I've gone back and forth with people. Listen, is it how I would run the team? Not necessarily. But if the whole locker room and team is bought into being aggressive, then guess what's going to happen? Sometimes you're going to convert on 4th down, and sometimes you're not. And you kind of got to live with that. And my biggest gripe with them on Monday versus Atlanta was that they half-assed it. They we're going to go for it. We're going to be a go-for-it team. And then you didn't go for it on the biggest 4th and 3 of the game. Yeah. And when you should have, that is my biggest gripe. And today, they pretty consistently went for it. People were killing them because they, on 3rd and 11, they did a pass play and then kicked a 60-yarder. But Jake Elliott has that range. You're in a dome. I don't mind kicking it there. The defense held up. It was a sloppy win. It was a gross win. But when I look around the NFC and I see the other teams, and I see a team like the Vikings, who's 3-0 that we just talked about, and I sang their praises, but a team that going into the year, I didn't believe the roster was quite at that talent level. And then the rosters that I did believe at that talent level are struggling worse than the Eagles. I feel pretty good about where they're at.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, everybody in the NFC took a major drop off. The NFC is more wide open than it was last year. I mean, the 49ers, they still look dominant around this time last year. Right now, I don't know what to think. I don't think there's no clear-cut favorite or even say, oh, yeah, that's a Super Bowl team.
Well, that's why I said Minnesota is like
Yeah.
the best team through 3 weeks, but it's like, how much do you really truly hold on to that and believe that? And I know Vikings fans that believed their team was good are going to say, well, we believe it. And I don't get me wrong, if I was a Vikings fan, I'd believe it.
Yeah.
But as the general consensus going into the season, people pegged Minnesota as a 5-7 win team. They start off 3-0. It's like, do I buy into this, or is this just a hot run?
I mean, the Vikings have had the 49ers number for a cool little second now. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the next week after you beat one of the best teams in football, granted they weren't fully healthy, but you did beat one of the best coaches in football. You basically outsmarted them. Then the next week you hold the Texans. So that's 2 top 5 teams in the span of 2 weeks.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, I'm bought into them being real, but I don't think anybody would be saying the Vikings are clear cut. That's who's coming out the NFC.
That would be insane.
That's what I'm saying. But my point is, in an NFC where there's no clear cut who's coming out, I feel fine to be the Eagles, to think we've played sloppy, we're 2-1, and our division seems like it's a crapshoot. So we should probably win that.
All I'm saying is I just need to see some consistency with the Eagles, man. The last 10 games that the Eagles have played, there hasn't. I don't think there's been. Yeah, I don't even think there's been like a 2-game stretch where they've been honestly and above a top 10 team for back-to-back games. I can't remember the last time, because the last couple of weeks, man, especially dating back to week 16 of last year.
I'm pretty nervous for the game versus Tampa because I'm pretty confident AJ Brown will not be playing just because their bye week is week 5. So my guess is they're going to hold him out through the bye.
Early bye week.
Yeah, Devonta Smith might not be playing with a concussion. We'll see where that goes. Tampa's got a decent run defense. So I think getting this win here was very important, but not as important as it was for Baltimore to get their win today. Yeah. And they held on 28-25. I became a de facto Cowboys fan in this game because I was one CeeDee Lamb touchdown away from hitting $750 on a parlay.
Ooh, I know
and watching Cavante Turpin and Jalen Tolbert score touchdowns pretty much broke me, but at least as an Eagles fan, the Cowboys did not win the football game. And we'll talk about the Cowboys' perspective after this, but I want to ask you, going into this week, we knew that this was must win for Baltimore, but I kind of left the game feeling a little less confident in them than I did even going into the week. And I know that sounds crazy, but the fact that they almost choked this away really has me worried for some of the flaws that we saw in this team being real problems.
Yeah, man. And it seems like the problems are kind of getting worse by the week. I mean, the defense was a little bit better. I mean, the second half, they folded in the second half. Yeah. They definitely started to fold. And then, honestly, I don't even know if I can blame Lamar for the passing game. But when you cut off Zay Flowers and the tight ends aren't involved in the offense, it's basically non-existent. Nelson Aguilar did have a big play or two, but it's you can't. That was early on. So it's
personally, I think the only reason they won this game is because of how excellent Lamar is. He made that great throw to Zay Flowers, and then it was him who kept the ball and pulled it on that jet sweep and picked up the first down on the ground.
Yeah.
Their run, so we'll talk more about it for Dallas, but Dallas's run defense is dreadful. And the Baltimore Ravens, they still have one of the better rushing attacks in the NFL. Derrick Henry looked like, okay, the season's going, and this is Derrick Henry.
It's still top 5.
was decent, and Lamar Jackson was solid. That is, the Ravens felt like they were built to beat the Cowboys. We said that kind of going into this week, and the defense is just a concern. I have hope that they'll figure it out, but man, starting 0-2, dropping that one to the Raiders, Pittsburgh being 3-0, the team feels like a wild card team, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do know they do need to fix that defense because the way they run the ball, if their defense can just step it up and be a top 12, then they should easily win 11 games, even with the slow start that they've had so far. They needed this win today. You cannot start 0-3.
No.
I'm sorry. And if they would have lost today, man, they have a top 3 hardest schedule in the NFL. It's possible that they can miss the playoffs.
Yeah,
especially if Joe Burrow heats up.
this is still a team that's going to struggle against good run defenses, man, because when they're forced to pass that offensive line, we even saw it today. I get it. DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. Dallas has a pass rush, but a lot of teams have a pass rush. They were able to get home. That's what happened with the Raiders. Max Crosby was able to get home. If you could force Baltimore to be in passing situations, you could beat them. They are very beatable in that spot. So Baltimore gets the win. Lamar Jackson looks excellent, but we're still worried about them. But I don't know if we're as worried about Baltimore as we are the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll talk about the Cowboys to start because we were just talking about that game. But they can't stop a run like they can't stop a nosebleed, man. And if you have a good running game, you're going to be able to control the clock. You're going to be able to control the game versus Dallas, and they're going to have to end up playing catch-up if they don't start off hot offensively against your defense. And that's what we saw today. It was too little too late for Dallas. Their passing game was excellent. Dak Prescott played excellent in the second half of this game, but it was too little too late because their defense had already folded and let Baltimore just completely dog walk them for a half of football.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. But I don't think the way the Cowboys have, especially the way they play today, is not sustainable to win.
No.
To win at all. Because not only can they not stop the run, they can't run the ball either. How are you going to control you can't just get into a shootout every game. Like, what are they going to do? Zeke, you got Zeke out here running routes, dropping passes. You got this little, like, you can't run the ball at all. You can't rely on Dak Prescott to throw the ball 50-something times a game for an entire season. It's just not going to work. So, like you said, it seems like the Ravens are kind of built to beat the Cowboys because they can just control. The Ravens, one thing they're going to do is they're going to run the ball, especially with Lamar and Derrick Henry. And we've seen them kind of shut out Micah Parsons in a run attack. He was still making a couple plays.
Micah Parsons is not really good against mobile quarterbacks. That's what I've learned because as an Eagles fan, when Jalen Hurts had his legs under him, some right now at this point, and I don't know why, sometimes he has it, sometimes he doesn't, but when he used to always have them, he would kill Micah Parsons on read options. And we saw Lamar Jackson do that repeatedly today. The first drive of the game, Lamar had two big runs, the one for the touchdown, because Micah Parsons just kept biting on the read option. And Lamar just cooked him to the outside.
Yeah, I don't know how other people feel about the Cowboys, but they look very, very beatable. And last year, especially at home, last year, they didn't look beatable.
They didn't lose a game at home last year.
Exactly.
Now they're 0-2 this year.
Exactly. So, this is definitely – everyone expected the offense to look like this. And it's going to get worse, especially if they pay Micah, man. They're not, who are they actually going to throw the ball to besides CeeDee Lamb? So, this level of play is not sustainable. They need I'm big on running the ball.
And they're not built to win playoff games by any means. January games come around in the NFC, and they're not going to beat any of these teams. Let's talk about it. The Minnesota Vikings, Aaron Jones cooked them last year. He'd cook them again. The San Francisco 49ers, they cook them every single year. The Philadelphia Eagles with that offensive line and Saquon Barkley, like you're going to be able to run all over them and control the game. The Atlanta Falcons with Bijan Robinson and that offensive line, they're going to be able to run all over them and control the football game. The Green Bay Packers with Josh Jacobs and that offensive line, they're going to be able to you have to be able to run the ball and stop the run in the NFC, especially when it gets colder out in January, and Dallas is not built for that. This defense has gotten worse since Dan Quinn left. It's not a bad, secondary and pass defense, but to be quite frank, you don't really need to pass the ball a ton on them.
That is true. And honestly, I don't want to say false information, but they might statistically have the worst run attack in the league right now, man. because the Panthers.
After today, the Panthers was pretty good.
Yeah, they had a 100-yard rusher. I don't think the Cowboys have had a 100-yard rusher yet. So I think they have one of the worst run attacks in the NFL, man. And in the NFC, especially. In the AFC, you can get away with that because especially since, Chiefs, Pacheco's hurt. You got the Bengals. They don't have a run attack. You got certain teams that you can just get into shootouts and just pray for the best. The NFC, you can't do that because you're going to run into a team like the Lions with a two-headed monster.
Yeah, I didn't even say the Lions before. Like all the top teams in the NFC can run the ball. And have an okay run defense. Dallas can't exploit anybody's run defense, so they can't control the clock. And the time of possession for Dallas is probably going to look pretty bad in a lot of games. The San Francisco 49ers, man, they fall to 1-2 after losing to the Rams today. The Rams basically keep their season afloat, going to 1-2. Matt Stafford, without Puka, without Cooper Kupp, somehow leads this team to a victory. Good for him.
He's unbelievable, bro.
You know, we had talked about this. Brock Purdy, his contract may be decided by these next couple of games. I actually thought Purdy played fairly well today, but the 49ers couldn't close out this game, man. And they're now 1-2. Super Bowl hangovers are real. McCaffrey, he is going to be out for a decent amount of time. Debo's going to be out. We'll see on George Kittle. The injuries are piling up. Brandon Ayuk, I think he really missed training camp, maybe, or I don't know.
That boy is out of shape for sure. To say
Something's
the least.
Not right with him. Javon Jennings had to be Superman today for the 49ers to have a shot against a Rams team with a third-string offensive line and missing their top two weapons. Like, this should have been a dominating win for the 49ers. They were favored by more than a touchdown on the road, and they lost this game. Is it time to panic on the 49ers, man?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, everybody, the biggest question mark was with the 49ers was always going to be the health, but I don't think people expected the injury bug to hit the team this early. But you can't blame Brock Purdy for what happened today. You really can't. He had like 6 or 7 drop passes, in one game, 6 or 7. Like, you can't beat anybody like that, man. I mean, and the 49ers run game was not as good as everyone would have expected it to be today because they knew they were going to lean on it, so it made them a little bit predictable. Javon Jennings did have to be Superman. They still have weapons. Kyle Juszczyk is still an all-pro. They still have Brandon Ayuk.
Jordan Mason is still solid.
Jordan Mason. I mean, I get it. You don't have the greatest offensive line like you used to a couple years ago, but it's still a very decent offensive line. You still
have always a future Hall of Famer and Trent Williams on that line.
Exactly, man. And Brock Purdy is not going to lose you games. You can rely on that. So honestly, it just comes down to that defense showing up. And honestly, Brandon Ayuk, he's going to be the X factor here, man, because you're paying him all this money. I mean, Debo, you're going to have to get a head start about when it comes to looking at what your offense is going to look like without Debo, because a lot of people were saying that this is going to be Debo Samuel's last year. So this is where you can look at what your offense is going to look like, man. You're not going to have Christian McCaffrey forever. He's always going to have the injury bug also. So you got to see what this offense is going to look like, man.
Yeah, and the next month for them versus New England, versus Arizona, at Seattle, versus the Chiefs. So, while New England looks like it could be an easier game, New England's going to be on longer rest. And it is, I don't want to say it's time to panic, but if I'm a 49ers fan, I'm slightly concerned with what happened today. And I'm like, losing 2 in a row, that's new for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I say panic. When I say panic, I'm talking about like panic when it comes to like your future, because
and it's also like, did we mess up by not winning the Super Bowl last year and miss the window?
Yeah, because, I mean,
and again,
like been open for a while too.
I'm not saying it's happened. Because the 49ers could easily go 3-1 over the next month, be back to being a great team, and nothing could come of it. But there's also a world where they start dropping some of those games. You lose out of Seattle. You lose to Kansas City. Maybe Tampa Bay beat. And now this is a wild card team, and Seattle wins the division. And now they're having to go on the road throughout the playoffs. And it's a slippery slope, man. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point in the season where I feel like everyone gets like a reality check. Yeah, because everyone looks at the schedule in the beginning of the year, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's 12, that's 13 wins." But this is football. Your team doesn't always win games that they're supposed to win, man.
The talent gap in the NFL is a lot closer than people think. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Carolina Panthers are a lot closer than people think, man.
That's crazy.
But I'm just saying, in the NFL, like, these are all professional players. Like, these guys all made the NFL. Like, none of them are like there's some exceptions, but for the most part, none of them are bad. Like, these are all good players to reach this level. So on any given Sunday, if you don't show up, the other team's ready to punch you in the mouth and take your lunch money. And that's what happened at the end of this game. The 49ers went up 24-14 with 12 minutes left, got comfortable, and got punched in the mouth and could never recover.
Yeah, I mean, and
they don't have the talent of Debo, Kittle, and McCaffrey out there to just recover from being sloppy like that.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I mean, that's when it comes to Brock Purdy not putting the ball in harm's way or whatever. But honestly, this offense is gonna have to lean on Mason, and they're gonna have to lean on Brandon Ayuk. Man, we're gonna see over the next couple of weeks how much they mean to this team.
Ayuk's got to step it up. I want to talk about the Panthers here. You brought it up before the show. You said we have to get this in the itinerary. Said not a problem. Definitely a team we want to talk about. Are you willing to say because I saw it all over social media, of course, but are you willing to say from today that Bryce Young was the problem because of what this team did against Vegas?
I don't think this team is a good team, so I'm not going to say Bryce Young was the problem. But one thing I can 100% say, and we've seen it, is that the Panthers can't develop quarterbacks. Just because you've seen Andy Dalton come in for 1 week and perform does not mean that they can develop quarterbacks. Like, two things could be true. Maybe Bryce Young is trash. We don't know yet. But we do know the Carolina Panthers cannot develop quarterbacks. That is one thing we know for certain. We've seen Sam Darnold come on this team, and 2 years later, now he's 3-0. Just beat two top 5 teams. Too. Baker Mayfield won a playoff game, beat one of the best teams last year in the playoffs. So we know that this team cannot develop quarterbacks. Who knows what Bryce Young could be? We've seen 2 top 5 picks already be successful after leaving this team. Why are we going to give up on Bryce Young in his second season? It just makes no sense to me. Yes, Andy Dalton played amazing, but we also saw the same thing with Joe Flacco come off the couch and start launching deep balls everywhere. Thing.
And this team brought in Dave Canales to develop Bryce Young. And by week 3, upper management's like, bench him. And it's just not really a decision I agreed with. And again, the Panthers won today, and I'm sure Panthers fans were happy about it, and it was great, and it made them happy. And I'm happy for you because honestly, being a fan of that team is tragic, and you just deserve better as a fan. But I also think there's sometimes a quarterback change creates a 1 week jolt in a team, and teams don't really know how to scout for it because they haven't seen Andy Dalton in a long time. And let's see where next week goes. I just think the clock might strike midnight a lot quicker on Andy Dalton and the Panthers being good than people realize. They play the Bengals next week. A little bit of Andy Dalton revenge game versus the Bengals could be a fun storyline there. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that this does not point to Bryce Young being necessarily a problem. They had 4 trade offers this week, it was reported, for Bryce Young. So people around the NFL aren't ready to give up on him.
Man, let the Steelers get hold of Bryce Young. Let him and Justin Fields duke it out.
I heard a lot of people say Dolphins with the Tua injury. And
that's been a big rumor.
With Skylar Thompson looking as terrible as he did today.
He got hurt too, right?
Yeah, he did. And Bryce Young, I mean, listen, if I'll say this, and I said it about Tua, if you can't succeed in Miami with A-Chain, Waddle, Hill, and McDaniel calling plays, then I'll say you're trash if you can't win with those guys. But in Carolina, with 2 games with a normal head coach, and Deontay Johnson's your best wide receiver, and Adam Thielen's the 2, I'll give you a little bit of a grace period.
Yeah, and that is true. And honestly, I don't blame the Panthers for benching Bryce Young. I mean, he was awful. I don't blame him.
I kind of blame them. I'm kind of the opposite. I know that they won this week, so saying, "Oh, I blame them," still sounds like a little silly because they won and it worked. But did you honestly expect to come into this year if you were the Panthers and win a ton of games? I know you wanted to win more than you did last year, but you brought in Dave Canales because of what he did with Geno Smith and because of what he did with Baker Mayfield to develop Bryce Young. And to pull the plug so quickly on that when you're still waiting on Jonathan Brooks, you're still to get a real run game.
Yeah.
You are still waiting on Xavier Legette to pop. You're still waiting on Jatavion Sanders. It's not like you have a great defense or a great offensive line. Again, with all that you have invested in Bryce Young, it feels so silly to pull the plug this early. Again, I know today was successful, and I'm sure it was nice for Panthers fans to watch their team actually play good. But in the long scheme of things, this is not going to yield any good results.
Yeah,
Andy Dalton's not the future of the team and going to lead them on some Super Bowl run this year.
I mean, that is true, but I'm looking at it from this perspective, right? If you watch the Panthers play, Bryce Young, he doesn't look prepared. He looks rattled. He looks like he's lost all his confidence.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. So from that perspective, that's why I say I don't blame them for benching him. Let him sit a couple of weeks. Let him look, because he's never really watched the games from the bench. You know, he's never watched the game.
I mean,
maybe he can look at it from that perspective.
Dave Canales did not want to bench him. That was pretty clear. So the quarterback guru that you brought in to be the head coach of your team and fix him said it's not the best idea to bench him. And then you said, well, we're doing it anyways. Figure it out. Yeah. We'll see if they figure it out. But I don't love it. But as we do at the end of every pod, especially on these recap shows, the one-sentence game, we want to talk about every team, but we don't want to be on here for 2.5 hours with you guys. So I'm going to go through each game. We're each going to give one sentence on our thoughts on it. Starting Thursday Night Football, the New York Jets defeated the New England Patriots 24-3. One sentence, go.
Aaron Rodgers is back, baby.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I called the Jets Super Bowl contenders. Everybody really reacted to them losing to San Francisco, and I was like, the Jets have never played more than 4 offensive snaps together. The Niners were just in the Super Bowl. Why don't we give the Jets a little bit of time to breathe? The New York Giants defeat the Cleveland Browns 21-15.
What are the Browns doing over there?
So that's funny. You thought the storyline was more Browns. Mine is Malik Neighbors is a top blank receiver already.
Oh yeah, he's a
somebody fill in the gap, but
he's the truth.
He is the first wide receiver in NFL history in his first 3 games to have 20-plus receptions and 3+ touchdowns. He tied for second in terms of most receptions in a player's first 3 starts with Anquan Bolden. Puka's the only guy that's ahead of both of them. So Malik's
with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, with Daniel Jones, Malik's off to a career start. The Green Bay Packers defeat the Tennessee Titans 30-14.
Malik Willis is a little bit better than I thought.
Time to bench Will Levis.
Yeah, I mean, I said that after week 1, so I said that week 1.
The Indianapolis Colts defeat the Chicago Bears 21-16.
Anthony Richardson is not what I thought he was. It seems like he's getting worse by the game. If you actually watch him play, it's not good film, man.
he had one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen in this game in the red zone on that outplay. He just threw it to 3 Chicago Bears defensive backs. It was bad. The Bears offensive line will be the death of this team. That's how I feel. A Colts rush defense that was giving up 250 rush yards, 150 rush yards a game, and you average 2.2 yards per carry. That's terrible. And there was an option play on 4th down, and there's a still screenshot on Twitter of just the entire Bears offensive line on the ground. It was pretty bad.
Oh yeah, God, free Caleb.
Yeah. The Minnesota Vikings defeat the Houston Texans 34-7. One sentence, go.
Sam Darnold for MVP.
Brian Flores, future head coach.
He's again like the truth, man. He's looking like he could be the truth for somebody.
The Philadelphia Eagles defeat the New Orleans Saints 15-12. One sentence, go.
Derek Carr folded today. I had him in a parlay, so that's all I got, man. I'm disappointed in him.
Yeah, sloppy, but a win's a win. That's how I'm feeling about this as an Eagles fan.
Cost me $500.
The Pittsburgh Steelers defeat the Los Angeles Chargers 20-10. One sentence go.
Justin Fields, our QB1 of the future. That's all I got to say.
Through 3 weeks, best defense in the NFL. That's how I feel about Pittsburgh right now. The Denver Broncos go on the road and defeat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 26-7.
I didn't even know that.
Go.
I didn't even know that.
Missed that one in the 1 o'clock slot.
100%. But I guess Bo Nix showed improvement from last week.
Yeah. I would say survivor pool ruiner. I know a lot of people pick Tampa, but this is one of those things. The Broncos were 0-2, the Bucs were 2-0. Desperation plays a role in the NFL from time to time. The Carolina Panthers defeat the Vegas Raiders 36-22. One sentence go.
Andy Dalton career revival on the way.
Yeah, the Raiders are going to be a roller coaster. To go from beating Baltimore in Baltimore to losing at home to Carolina, that is an up and down team. The Seattle Seahawks defeat the Miami Dolphins 24-3. One sentence go.
I feel so sad for Miami. They have all that talent going to waste.
Yeah, it would have been going to waste either way, in my opinion. Mine is Seattle might be legit 3-0. The Niners are 1-2. The Rams are 1-2. The Cardinals are 1-2. You got a 2-game lead already in the NFC West. Hey,
that defense looks good too.
Mike McDonald hitting right away. The Baltimore Ravens beat the Dallas Cowboys 28-25. One sentence go.
Good desperation win for the Ravens, but I want to see them play a complete game.
Dallas can't stop a nosebleed. I'll keep saying it week after week. They can't stop any run. The Los Angeles Rams beat the San Francisco 49ers 27-24. One sentence go.
I think the 49ers are in trouble.
Matt Stafford, give him his flowers. To go out there and get the win, back against the wall with virtually nothing. I mean, no O-line, missing your top 2 weapons, season potentially on the line, about to be 0-3. Good for him. The Detroit Lions defeat the Arizona Cardinals 20-13. One sentence go.
The Lions handle business today.
Yeah, back to the ground and pound. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. That's where the offense should go. I want to look at it because I said that the offense was way too Jameson Williams dependent the first couple of weeks, and I didn't hear nothing about him today. Yeah, 1 catch for 9 yards. that's on 3 targets. That's back to what I thought that they should be doing with. Not that Jameson Williams isn't a big play guy, but I just didn't think you should pepper him like he's Amon-Ra. You have that guy already.
They're trying to push that agenda that this is his breakout year, clearly, or they were.
So, the Kansas City Chiefs defeat the Atlanta Falcons 22-17. One sentence go.
That game was actually a roller coaster. But my sentence is, don't catch Patrick Mahomes in a 1-score game, man. He's going to win every time.
Yeah, I'm going to send one that'll make Chiefs and Falcons fans angry the same. What is pass interference?
Yeah.
I don't know. Thought it might have been on that Kyle Pitts play, but then thought it wasn't on a play.
His head wasn't even turned. But
listen, I'm not a blame the refs guy. I'm not blaming the refs, but
Mahomes don't blame the refs.
I just think it's interesting that in the last 2 weeks, both Chiefs games have ended on pass interference, questionable calls, and both have been KC's favorite. What do I know?
Man. But only you can challenge plays like that. You should call this, review this. So you missed this call.
There'd be a lot of flags flying.
Yeah.
And a lot of referees being stubborn and still not giving them credit for sure. Calling it not enough contact or whatever they would say. But that's all we got for week 3. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. We'll be back up here later this week to preview week 4 and just talk about the landscape of the NFL. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, make sure you do so. We'll be dropping 2 podcasts a week here, clip videos going out. We appreciate you guys. We will catch you next time. Peace.
Yes, sir.